for the online printout from the PDF? Or? There we go. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Morgantown Board of Zoning Appeals. Please turn off all cell phones or other devices that may disrupt these proceedings. It is the duty of this board to consider requests for relief from the requirements of the city's zoning regulations, to consider conditional use permit requests, and to hear administrative appeals. The board conducts business in the following order: review, amend, and approve minutes of a previous meeting. We will then move to unfinished business and then take up new business. Before adjourning for the evening, we will invite or put aside time for announcements from staff. Mr. Yeager. Each request is heard in the order that it appears on the agenda for each conditional use and variance request. The following is done. I will introduce the agenda item, and the planning division will present a staff report which may or may not offer a recommendation. The applicant agent will be asked to present their justification for their request, which may include questions by members of the board. We will then open a public hearing to hear testimony in support of or in opposition to the request. Rules regarding public testimony are as follows. Anyone wishing to testify during the public hearing may do so once recognized by me, or may, in lieu of oral testimony, submit written testimony to the chair. All recognized speakers must approach the podium, state their name and address for the record, and speak clearly into the microphone. All comments must be addressed to the board, should be relevant to the application, and may not be of a personal nature or personal attacks. All speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the speaker, that time will not be counted toward her 5 minutes. If there is a large number of speakers, including many who are a part of groups or organizations, we may, to avoid repetitive comments, elect to ask for a representative to speak on behalf of the group. Speakers are notified that irrelevant comments or comments of a personal nature or personal attacks may result in the speaker forfeiting his or her opportunity to participate in the public hearing. I may elect to recognize the applicant agent at the end of the public hearing to provide rebuttal or additional comments, which will be limited to an additional 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the applicant agent, that time will not be counted toward that total 5-minute period. After all testimony is heard, I will declare the public hearing closed and no further public comment will be permitted. Please keep in, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Uncivil, unruly, and or disruptive behavior at any time during this meeting is prohibited and will result in removal from the public meeting. State law requires the board to consider findings of fact for each conditional use and variance request. The request cannot be granted unless a majority of the quorum present, and we do have a quorum, by the way, finds in the positive for all of the findings of fact. The board may elect to continue the hearing to another date if it needs additional information. Applicants and requesting parties will be notified in writing by planning of the board's findings and conclusions, regardless of whether a request is approved or denied. Decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Monongalia County within 30 days following that receipt of written notification from planning. Any work done relating to decisions rendered by this board during this 30-day period is at the sole financial risk of the applicant for each case. Thank you for your consideration and respect for these proceedings and the opinions of all meeting participants. So let's do roll call. Mr. DeWitt.
Gabe DeWitt.
Ms. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Schomburger.
Here.
Mr. Benison is here. We do have a quorum, just stating that for the record. We don't have minutes to consider, but we will at future meetings, presumably. So, yes. Mr. Yeager, do you want to present for this case?
Yeah.
And, I'm sorry, let me read the case into the record. This is V23-06, City Neon, 300 High Street. Request by Miss Crystal Miller of City Neon, representing Durar Coffee, for variance relief from Article 1369 concerning signage. This is in City Tax District 11, Tax Map 26A, Parcel 122 in the B4 General Business District. And it's surrounded, we should note additionally, it's surrounded by B4 General Business District.
All right, thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Yeager.
Chairman.
Thank you.
The petitioner seeks to install a new internally illuminated 12 square foot wall sign with an acrylic face for a new business establishment at 300 High Street. On the screen and in your packet, you can see a picture on the left shows where the location is. That's the Montague County parcel viewer map. And to the chairman's point, it's in the downtown, which is zone B4, which is the general business district for the city. If you look, this is where the location is. The storefront width is approximately 25 foot, and that's important because based on our sign code ordinance for the downtown, there's a percentage or a calculation that has to be applied to determine how large the sign can be in terms of area. And when you look at in your packet, and I provided an updated copy on the dais in front of you, this is the schematic details for Drawer Coffee. You can see that it's going to be basically 24 2 foot by 6 foot wide sign with a basically 6 inches or half a foot depth. And if we're looking at in terms of what's permitted and what's being requested by the applicant, this is just kind of a reference here. These are all the different sign codes that are applicable to this particular application. Article 136907 I1, I made a note of that because in your packet in the staff report, it's actually 0.08 I1. It should have read 0.07 I1. So I just wanted to put that for the record. That the permitted square footage is for the wall area or for the signage is 10 square feet. The proposed sign is 12 square feet, so the applicant's requesting a 2 square foot variance. The other variance requests to deal with the type of signage, whether it be opaque, the internal illumination, and the materials used to create the sign. And what's being proposed is a partially translucent, internally illuminated, and acrylic-faced sign. So the applicant is requesting a variance on items B, 1, 2, and 3 of 136908. And that will conclude my report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yeager. Do we have a representative for this case?
Yes.
Please state your name.
Yes, please.
Crystal Miller from City Neon, and that's 10. So City Neon has been contracted to install signage designed and manufactured by another sign company. And this is the signage that they have designed for this site. It is a 2 foot by 6 foot illuminated cabinet sign with digitally print vinyl graphics for the copy of the face. Goodness. There are a few other internally illuminated cabinet signs in the downtown area. There's Marini's Hair Care on Willie, United Bank on Chestnut, West Virginia Junior College on Chestnut, Salvation Army on University Avenue, and the Asian Massage on University Avenue. These are all in the B4 district downtown, which is the same district as this. So the cabinet itself is not unusual to the downtown area. So I guess, that's about it. They're asking for a 2 square foot allowance in size, and that was due to scaling out the chosen graphic that they had designed.
So on the graphic here, the light box dimensions are referenced as 2 by 5, but
It's actually a 2.6. That was a misprint when they sent over the graphics.
So I was wondering if the sign area was larger than the light box to which it would be affixed. But so for the record, it's 2 by 6
Correct.
for everything. All right.
Yep.
And then, what's the depth of the light box off the
6 inches.
facade?
I was going to say, generally, they use a 5-inch return or a 6-inch return.
This one I think was 6 inches.
Six.
This one is 6 inches
Is that what it
extruded
is?
aluminum.
6-inch extruded.
Yeah.
So that's the depth of the box.
Correct.
All right. Any questions?
Do you know the luminance value of this of what's, like, how much light's gonna be pouring out of this? I mean, just curious, because you've got the vape stores up the street that just blast light, so what's the, what
This
has it
is
there?
actually going to be minimal because of the digitally printed graphics. It's going to cover the majority of that sign with dark, so that when it is actually dark outside and the illumination is shining through, you're pretty much only going to see the white portion of that sign.
And the glow of the.
It'll be a faint
signal.
glow because it's such a
Yeah.
dark background.
Right.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I just had one question for the applicant. So like the coffee bean background, well, I mean, is it the intent to see that?
The
coming
pinkish
through, or-
part
Yeah.
you will be able to see, but not as brilliantly as the white itself,
Okay.
because that's
Sure.
the focus of it.
Yep.
Cool.
And I think on the schematic drawing, it's illumination of white 24 VLED.
Mhm, okay,
Yeah.
that would, yeah, we could calculate that, but I'm just curious, just seeing that, you know, how, like you mentioned, all the different signs that have been given variances that are all illuminated, like if that's something that we should allow illumination in the, going forward, if that's a thing, but like restrict the amount of illumination so that it's just not a bright thing, I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah,
Well, is that, to speak to that point, that's a good point. The 24-volt LED, is that like an industry standard, so to speak?
Generally, your power supplies are either going to be a 24 volt or a 12 volt. 12 volts are like 60 watts, and 24 volts are generally 120 watts.
But you could still produce quite a bit out of that. I mean, I guess all of the opaque things that she's using and the minimal white lettering would then be the effective illumination coming out of this. I'm just curious if at some point, like if that does get updated, there should be maybe a measurable amount of like,
yeah, I think staff is cognizant of that, and we need to look at
okay.
revisiting the sign ordinance, period.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just to even out, because you're right, depending upon what that background is.
It could be all white. You could just be.
And like the vape or other merchants, if it's mostly, you know, if it's not a darkish material, it is gonna be blasting a light signature. That is visually distracting.
Yeah, that does look, that should look nice, and then the tinted pink, you know, it's not gonna be obnoxious.
Right. Any other questions?
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms.
All right,
Miller.
thank you.
Public.
Um, So let's go ahead and open, did you have any questions?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay, let's go ahead and open public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to case number B 23-10, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, close the public hearing. Mr. Yeager, just to state for the record, no recommendations from planning
Correct.
with respect to this case.
The only note that was made is that it does, the applicant did reference that there are several signs that have a cabinet downtown. This just differs from previous or more recent variance requests because of, it's not a channel letter sign, or the sign isn't backlit, so to speak, so
Right.
just wanted to make that a note.
Right. And then speaking to, Ms. Miller, you've come before the BZA for many signage applications. This is, what's presented here or what's proposed here is not with respect to area, material, and illumination. It's not an unusual request. It's, right? It's not an outlier.
I think not, because there, like I said, there were a couple examples of cabinet sign, this style of sign in the downtown area already,
Right.
so it's not the first of its kind. And then as far as the size of it, they're only asking for a 2 square
Two.
foot, which is pretty small, considering that's a 25 foot and it's taking up 6 linear feet
Yeah.
of space. So that's,
You've presented other cases where the area request has been much greater, so.
Significant.
All right, do we want to have a look at the findings of fact?
I'm.
And, I just want to state, there are no conditions.
Staff didn't make a recommendation and no.
Right, no
No
Okay, so it's-
no recommendations, no conditions, just to state that for the
Yeah.
record, I'm sorry.
No,
That's
just
okay.
I noticed the difference that from last time where we had all of these recommendations from the city.
Right.
And this time, yeah.
Sometimes
okay.
we have,
Right.
sometimes
We'll
not.
blame, we'll blame Rodney.
And as
for
well,
being-
historically, to state for the
Nothing.
record,
Yeah.
planning
Right.
tends not to make recommendations with respect to
Signage.
signage.
Ah, okay.
It's so basic.
Applications, that's, yeah.
It's
So-
not a complex issue. So I move that we accept the findings of facts as stated in the packet.
I second that. Though I do have a question. Just
Go right ahead.
Okay, so as people go to design signs and knowing that it's a 10-foot, or sorry,
12.
Well, 12 foot, but
12 square
yeah, 12 square feet, knowing that that's the condition, like, so what was the, I guess, the proposed hardship that was why they went over, I guess, would be my
Mhm.
only question.
City Neon didn't design the sign
Gotcha.
or manufacturer, and I have not spoken to the actual business. The third party has taken care of designing and so forth, so I can give an idea, but nothing
That's right.
concrete.
I don't see an issue with it, I was just curious of, being that there are standards and things that designed by, if that was something they considered. I mean, like you said, it is a very large swath, and there's gonna be quite a bit of it unutilized, so, I mean.
Well, maybe the height of the letter, the letter font
Text.
is driving.
Sure.
Because if you think about it, if you downsize, if you scale especially the capital D and the capital C down,
Becomes unreadable, start getting into.
you're gonna miss the point.
Yep.
And you don't want, I really like this design here with the, whatever color you wanna call that, the peach or, but I think if you scale down the letters, that's gonna swamp
Mhm.
the letters.
If anything, I
So
would
that
have
you're not,
gone bigger. That's my only kind of thought. If we're really gonna go for 2 feet, it's such a big space swath store.
Trying to help you out for
Yeah, I don't know. That's
This
just
was
my
a
only
moment.
thought. Yeah. Sorry,
I'm
I'll
just
stop.
kidding.
I'm just curious.
it is, it's a modest
Yeah.
2 square foot
Yeah, modest
request.
2
It's
square
modest.
feet variance.
Modest
And
square
it's-
feet. Yeah.
It's not inconsistent with, I guess we could ask them to, I could see
No, I
shrinking
don't.
it
I don't
laterally.
think it's necessary. No, I was just curious on the standard, but there's so many other things. And maybe did you talk to Bead Monster next door to see what their feelings were on the signage by chance?
No.
Okay, that's all.
No. Yeah, no. Like I said, with us being a third party, we technically, by our contracts, aren't allowed to speak directly to the client.
Gotcha.
Because that becomes a compromising position there, so.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to I second Heidi's point to accept.
So there is a motion on the floor.
So we have a motion do you have any questions before we continue?
No.
All right. All right, so we have a motion to accept the findings of fact for case number V23-10. Yes. Do we have a second? We do have a second, okay. So, and no conditions, no recommendations. How do we vote? Let's take the roll. Mr. DeWitt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Cook? Mr. Schomburger, aye. And I also vote to accept the findings of fact. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I move that we grant the variance for B23-10
Mm-hmm.
with no conditions as proposed.
And I'll second that. So we have a motion to grant the requested variance for V23-10. We have a second. Mr. DeWitt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Cook and Mr. Schomburger?
Aye.
All right, and I also vote to approve. So your request has been approved, and as you well know, the case, you'll receive written notification from planning, 7 to 10 days typically. Please keep in mind, it can be appealed to Circuit Court of Montague County, and any work you or your client undertakes in that 30-day appeal period is done at your sole financial risk. But we thank you once again for coming down.
Thanks, Crystal.
And giving an excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Everyone have a good
Thank you so much.
Have a good
Enjoy the
one.
weather. Have a good evening.
I like our PowerPoints.
And, yeah. And so, Mr. Yeager, you have
Yes.
announcements, I think.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, as you all know, Rodney is no longer with the city of Morgantown. He found another exciting job opportunity and decided to pursue that. I know we'll certainly miss him around the office. He always had good information and really appreciated his work ethic a lot. But we know
Positive attitude.
yes,
Yeah.
and we
Can
wish
do
him the
attitude.
best
Yes,
going
we do.
forward.
Absolutely.
Also wanted to, this is my first time meeting Mr. DeWitt in person besides actually maybe passing in City Hall at one point, I think. So pleasure to meet you and look forward to working with Mr. Plyler as well. I know there was some discussion about having a onboarding session to kind of go over kind of the lay of the land and you know, kind of the responsibilities. I'm not sure if Ms. Cook or Mr. Benison, you ever had that where you had like a packet that was presented or, okay. So I think we will try to schedule next month a time where we can do that. And Logan, I don't think you had the chance, so we will do that here pretty soon. Also wanted to give you an update on the comprehensive plan process. It's been a 2-year-long process. We've been working with a consultant out of Alexandria, Virginia, an urban design and planning firm. I think they've done a wonderful job for us. That plan is starting its adoption process. The first actual meeting to start that process is tomorrow with the Planning Commission. There'll be a public hearing, and then if it moves on to the process, there'll be a presentation made to City Council, and then if it goes from there, then there'll be 2 readings of council before it become active. So Mr. Bennis, I know, attended the last public open house that we had. I think that was well attended. And I just can't, thank the team, thank the community also. We've had a really good public engagement. Our meetings have been well attended. Our stakeholder meetings, which were more intimate, were still really well attended and people were engaged. So really appreciate that. And then we will have at least 2 items of business for the next board meeting in October. So I'm starting to review those. Rodney had kind of got them prepped and said, hey, you got 2 more that made the deadline. So I'll be working on those and seeing if anything else has come in. So we will have a meeting the 3rd Wednesday of October.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And that's all I have, sir.
All right. We don't need a motion to adjourn, but I move that we adjourn this regular meeting of
I'll
the
second.
BZA.
All right.
All right, and we'll just wait for the,
Thank you,
here
everybody.
just a moment. Thank you
Mhm.
very much.